So me and you both have made pretty much the TikTok Hall of Fame of getting kicked off. Can you tell us about getting canceled on TikTok?
Multiple times canceled. And so my TikTok channel doing really well. I don't know how many followers I had, 100-something thousand. I didn't even post it. I had people, I'm like, take the videos I'm putting here and post them here. So I'm like, it was like a no-brainer. I'm like, expand. So I do this one video on this guy who was being made fun of for this girl for talking to her at the gas station. Basically, he walks up to her and is like, hey, you're attractive. Can I have your phone number? Whatever. And she gets out of that state. She's like, imagine this guy has the nerve to come and talk to me at the gas station. I'm too busy. Yep. I don't want to get hit on. I got this. And I'm like, who do you think you are? Just because you're young in your 20s, beautiful girl and blonde. And the people hated that video so much. I had 58,000, not likes or views, negative comments. 58,000. Like, and I'm reading like, you're the biggest asshole predator in the world. I'm like, I'm just defending a guy talking to a girl at a gas station. Like, when my girlfriend fills up the Lambo at the gas station, people are like, wow, nice car. Oh my goodness, or nice view. Like, do you think she's like, you creepo, and come home, make a video saying, how dare you talk to me? Don't you know I'm a girl? Like, what? Like, I just don't understand it. I'm like, I'm old, I'm 47. When I was young, you could actually approach women and talk to them and say, hi, I find you attractive. I like your shoes, your shirt, whatever. Can I have your phone number? Let's go out for coffee. Now you can't talk to anyone.
Why do you think?
Looking at this from the perspective of the average woman getting hit on, because that's what we're talking about. This isn't somebody complimenting your car. My wife had that happen all the time. She had this Pontiac that I fucking hated because guys were constantly stopping her, and you could tell the car nerds, these weren't guys trying to get at her. These were like, oh man, I love that model. We had people like honk from behind us to like get her to pull off the side of the freeway so they could drive by and be like, I love your car. It was the most obnoxious shit. We're not talking about normal everyday engagement. We're talking about hitting on, talking to somebody with some intention of getting a little bit more out of it or starting a relationship that was completely unsolicited. So I have trouble with these types of characterizations because we seem to have a switch that changes depending on who we're talking about. Are we talking about women at large, or are we talking about women that are close to us? Because if we're talking about women at large, we tend to be very critical of the women out there. We're speaking on our own behalf. But if we're talking about women close to us, then suddenly we're flipping the script and we're talking from a perspective of being more of a protector. So if it's your daughter, if it's your sister and they're attractive, you know when you see them out and about, if they're at the gym in normal gym attire and you're seeing dudes get closer and closer, your brain goes to one place and one place only, because we're guys, we know how guys think. And it's not just that a certain percentage of males are out trying to get laid, it's that all males are trying to get laid. It's just, is this male dealing with 10% of his brain that's trying to get him to get laid, and the other 90% can be used to engage in normal social discourse? Or is this person like just overwhelmed with the impulse to try to fuck everything that moves? So it's a little bit disingenuous, I think, when you paint the whole thing that way. Also, there's the issue that putting somebody else on the spot by telling them your feelings or making your desires known, on the one hand, it's like a right that people have to kind of assert themselves that way. But on the other hand, it does represent kind of a burden. Like, that's just a fact. There is a burden associated with somebody dumping that on you. And if it happens all the time and aggressively, it's a pain in the ass. And the fact is, women, especially attractive women, deal with it more. Now, I know this intimately because I went on an online dating spree for about 1.5 years. I had a long dry spell of nothing because I had nothing going for me. Live with my mom, no prospects, low self-esteem. And it wasn't until the first thing that dropped in my lap came around that I got married, stupidly. That ended quickly, as it should have. And then I had about 1.5 years where I did have a job. I did have like something in the way of status, and I was able to go through online dating avenues to try and find somebody. And I took it seriously. I took it as homework. But in trying to edge out other guys online, which, by the way, is the easiest fucking thing in the world to do. Like, I could write a book about that. Making yourself just look like a normal human being is so easy. You just have to be diligent with it. But in trying to edge out other guys, I got a sense of what the market was like. To be competitive, you have to know with what you're dealing with, who you're competing against. And it was just so easy to edge out these idiots. And talking to every girl, they just get flooded. Guys, on the other hand, we log on and nobody's giving us attention. Unless you're a 10 out of 10, unless you're a professional doctor, lawyer, whatever, nobody's sliding into your DMs. So it's very one-sided, and it's like that in the real world. I mean, shit, I wasn't anything special in high school. I didn't have any dating prospects. I wasn't good looking, wasn't an athlete. I remember some girl, man, I lived in the cornfields in Illinois, and this girl, I remember her name was Haley. Shout out to Haley. I don't know what she's doing. But Haley had a little bit of a fixation on your boy, all right? Haley took a look and she liked what she saw. Well, this girl was persistent, man. She not only made it known to me that she wanted a piece, but she got my home phone number. This is 1999. This is my freshman year in high school. This is 1999, before kids had cell phones. She got my home phone number, bro. You want to talk about some invasive shit? That is like, you feel exposed when they got your landline, because you can't get away from that. And that shit just rings. It just rings and rings. You got to pick it up and hang it up. And I remember making it pretty clear to her, like, I'm not that interested. Thank you. I'm flattered. I mean, this girl wore like baggy tie-dye shirts, no bra, never cleaned her hair, no makeup. And she's a young girl. She shouldn't have had to do that. But I just remember at the time I was like, not really into it. And making it clear she was still persistent. And I just remember the bind that put me in. So if I can take that uncomfortable feeling, and if I can just extrapolate it times like 100, which if you're a reasonably attractive woman, that's probably, if you're an unattractive woman, if you're one of the 600-pound sisters or 1,000-pound sisters and you start an Instagram, there's going to be like 10 guys from a call center on another continent being like, oh, mommy, you so hot. So women in general deal with it more, and I understand that. So it's got to be grating. So I didn't see the original video. I have charity to a woman saying, hey, you know what? I get this all day. I'm not in the mood. Please don't hit on me at a gas station. I think Greg, he's a Canadian. I think they do it differently up there with their beady eyes and flappy heads. Maybe they are just a little bit more cordial and respectful. But guys that approach women at gas stations, it's rarely like, oh, hey, how are you? How's your day? I mean, if, again, put it through the perspective of someone you care about. You see your daughter, she just turned 19. She's at a gas station, and you go in to get some snacks. You walk out, and you see somebody making a beeline to her to ask her how her day is. You know what's up with that. So I'm sympathetic to what they're saying, but I don't think they're being quite as charitable. Personally, I don't think you should make it. I don't think the gym should be treated as the bar. I don't think you should make it in the habit of treating it like a meat market, because people show up there and they show up there over and over and over. So it's kind of the same reason why you don't do it at work. When you're at work, you don't do it because it makes for a fucking hostile environment. So, that's my 2 cents on it. I don't know. Let's see what old F and F have to say about this.
Women behave this way, Greg, where they're being so, rude and, abrasive to men that might just want to start a conversation.
I think people overvalue themselves. I think they think they're better than they are. And I think that everyone's looking for that 5 or 10 or 15 minutes of fame. Like, oh my God, look at me. This happened to me. And so they do their little TikTok thing. And they're like, well, if I make this video and say this, whatever, creep, because he's not a 9 on 10, if he's not Chris Bumstead talking to me at the gas station, then everyone's going to agree with me and make me feel pretty and good about myself. And so I think people just do it for views, for clicks, likes, attention.
People overvalue themselves. See, this is where I run into trouble with this type of discussion, because you can't live in the, well, men do this, well, women do this, because you end up with such a low resolution picture of what's going on. You can't say anything meaningful. And it ends up being this kind of like weird situation where you're talking about a trope that's obvious. We know the pattern's there, but you end up just kind of assigning it to the whole group, and it doesn't really work out that well. I fully believe there is a subset of women who are engaged in social media so much and are used to this feedback loop that it becomes part of their identity and how they, whether they know it or not, how they seek out attention from other people. Absolutely, that's what social media was engineered to do. But that doesn't apply to all women. You go by age, demographic, geography, how educated they are, where they're at in their lives. People's peer groups are very different. So the idea of a woman online overvaluing herself because of the attention she gets, that doesn't like hold water with me, really. Like, I believe that type exists. I don't know that that's indicative of all women. And you got to think how many women undervalue themselves because it creates more pressure, more insecurity. Because if you see your peer group, if you're in high school, all your friends are doing that. Well, not all women can dance the same. Not all women present the same and can do try-on hauls and can do all the shit that women do to try to boost up their numbers. So it's possible somebody has a bad experience. In fact, I think it's more likely that they realize they don't get the engagement, and that creates a complex. On top of that, like, did women not get attention before? I understand that the dial's being turned up to 11 with those who participate in social media, but I don't think there was a time in human history where in your city, in your town, in your village, that you weren't constantly, if you were a desirable female, constantly dealing with the advances of other men. I think that that's a normal thing. And especially if you're hot shit in that scenario, like, talk about having an ego, right? Talk about having that change your sense of value. I think that that has always existed. So I'm not really sure that social media is really to blame for that. Though in that specific instance, obviously it's not helping. Now, of course, I don't want to qualify every statement, but I almost have to, because, people playing the victim, I mean, that's a thing too. We've seen the ridiculous videos where people are going out of their way, almost trying to trap somebody. So all types exist. Most people are reasonable. At the extremes, you get people that are more affected or very much less affected. At the extremes, you get people that are going to capitalize and not. So it's hard for me to humor this kind of, well, back in the day, it used to be like X, Y, or Z. Now, there's this other thing that happens. This is really interesting. It's women only liking the attention if it's a 10 out of 10. And I could go on a rant about that, because there is kind of a double standard that exists, and I haven't worked out in my head exactly what the rule should be. But the rules that get laid out for men, so women don't have to just get dicks thrown in their face constantly, seems to be very different if the guy is high value, if he's desirable. So, you can't qualify the rules for everybody and then make an exception if it's somebody that you actually decide that you do want attention from, because you don't know that. It's like a joke, right? You tell a joke if it's edgy. You don't know if it lands until you tell it. You have to tell the joke to decide if it was worth the risk. And it's similar with men putting themselves out there. You have to have the conversation with a woman before you get that feedback. If she's just using her gut to make up the rules as she goes, well, you need the input to get the output. You have to approach her before you can get confirmation that you, in fact, are not in her wheelhouse. So I don't really like that double standard. But at the same time, you have to meet reality on reality's terms. More attractive, wealthier, more charismatic individuals, men and women, they have different rules. And they play by those rules. And that's the thing. They move around based on the feedback they can expect to get. So don't get bitter just because you have to take a couple of extra steps. Because I said it before with the online dating thing. Edging out other dudes is the easiest fucking thing in the world. Act like a human being. Don't be a creep. Get your shit together and be assertive, but in the right ways. Like, I was assertive by making it homework. I routinely reach out to people. I reach out to a lot of people. I did it in a very specific way. I cut off conversations after like the second message that didn't get returned. And out of that, I was left with a couple people. And if you get a couple dates a week, over a couple months, you find some people that are compatible with you. Here's the thing. Hitting on girls at the gym is the same as hitting on them anywhere. Like, read the fucking room, guys. I think that's really about as easy as it gets. People just don't want to admit that they have to go those extra steps because they're likely not as desirable, at least not at first glance. And you can't just say, oh, be assertive. Oh, really be aggressive. Pursue them. Women love to be pursued. They don't like to be pursued by people that they're obviously not interested in. So that turns into harassment and stalking pretty quickly. It's kind of a weird one, but I think it depends on how charitable you're being to what they're
doing. And I want to say this too. What are your thoughts on all these thotties in the gym recording themselves, right? Where they're saying, oh, this guy's staring at me, blah, blah, blah.
He's a creep.
Shout out to Joey Swole. He's putting these hoes in check, man, and letting them know that they're ridiculous. What are your thoughts on that, man?
I mean, to me, that's equivalent to the gas station. They're making videos of people approaching them, talking to them. Everyone wants to think that they're so this or that. And it's like, if I'm looking at you, how do you know I'm not just trying to learn from you? How do you know I'm not just like turning my head over? Like, what makes you think that you're so special and so interesting that I have to look at you right now? And I think people just want to be the victim. People play that victim card. It's just like, woe is me. I'm a victim. Cancel culture. It's horrible. I think it's ridiculous. I can't believe these people are doing it. But at least with the gyms, I think most women as well are like, yeah, that's silly. Like, most of the women I talk to, they're like, no, it shouldn't be like that.
Mm-hmm. And I want to say this too, because my thing is, right, and I talk about this in my book, Why Women Deserve Less. I talk about how social media has negatively impacted women, right? And it's made them kind of have an overinflated sense of self-worth. And, we live in a clout era. If it's putting down a guy in the gym or putting down a guy that makes an approach at you at the gas station, right, to go ahead and make them...
Sorry, Why Women Deserve Less. I know that title does exactly what it's supposed to do, which is get a reaction. I think it's hilarious. I read through some of the book. It's stupid, cringy bullshit, but I'm sorry. I have to laugh because it's a troll title. It works. Themselves
feel better or try to get views or whatever. And you keep saying that you're old, etc. Was 20 years ago, were things like this back when you were in your mid 20s?
Nothing was like this. Like, it's so different. Like, I'm like, I wonder if every generation feels this bad. Like, because like my parents would have thought this. I'm like, am I that old that I don't understand the next generation? Because it must be that. Because I personally don't get it. When I was younger, you would go and talk to somebody. You would speak in person. You didn't swipe left or right or up and down or make a circle. You actually said, hi, my name is such and such. I think this. We should go out sometime. Now you can't talk to people. Like, I used to go and date people at the gym all the time. I'm like, hi, this is like, to me, the gym was like the bar because I was like, these are women with the same interest in me. They have the physique that I like. They have the same interests. I would date girls in the gym. That's what I did. Hi, you're working out. You look good. Let's go out. That was it. It was that simple. Now you can't do that. I would never.
Yeah.
Well, I have a girlfriend, but if I was, how could you do that? And I mean, at least me, I'd be like, hey, do you watch Coach Greg? That's me. If you want to talk, like, you would at least have a chance. But like the average person that's like a 5 on 10, good-looking guy, like 5'6", oh geez, you have no chance. Like, what would you do now? Like, I don't know how people do it. I don't know how people date now. Like, I don't know how.
Well, Greg, did you really know how people dated back then if they were a 5 out of 10? Just like pretty girls have pretty girl privilege, and they're not really aware of the rules that kind of exist for everybody else in extreme situations. I don't want to paint with a broad brush. But Greg is a young Greg, still got a square jaw, full head of hair, is a decent-looking dude. Talks a million miles a minute, which is a plus. And I don't know what he looked like back then, but he had the makings of a future pro bodybuilder. So I imagine he did pretty well in the gym scene. That represents a different echelon of existence than like the rest of humanity. So I'm not really sure it was that different for 5 out of 10s back then. I mean, I started training 99, probably not as early as Greg did, but early enough to realize how people were in the gym. So I don't know that things are that different back then. Like, I got to imagine Greg on the dating scene in a gym today goes off about the same. You look at like the Bradley Martins of the world, the Michael Hearns of the world, these types of guys in the gym, of course they're going to fucking clean up. And he's right. It's shared interest, because when you're a really jacked, beautiful woman who's either heavily in that space or maybe you're a hopeful Olympian one day, you're going to have close interest with similar high achievers. You're not going to have close interest with a 5 out of 10 who's overweight and just stumbled into the gym that day. So that's another thing. Anybody can go to a Gold's Gym or a 24-hour fitness. It doesn't mean that you guys are on the same level. It's not just physical attraction. It's, who lives in the gym, who takes it seriously. There's a lot of dynamics that go into it. So again, I don't think the gym should be treated as a meat market. When people are compatible, they tend to gravitate towards each other. If a conversation pops up, it goes from there. But I'm also inclined to think that someone like Greg probably is good at having organic conversations, getting through those first, second, third steps where a lot of people struggle and where they come on too strong. And again, if you're the girl and you're dealing with a bunch of socially retarded guys that come on too strong because they think that's how you date, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate on both sides.
Literally how people do it.
Yeah, it's pretty bad, man. The average guy is basically invisible to the average girl, and I talk about this extensively, how women's standards have kind of went up thanks to social media, and they have an overinflated sense of self-worth. I mean, the fact that you're even saying, like, yeah, back in the day, I could have been able to go up to a girl and talk to her in the gym and strike up and get a date going. We actually tell guys, don't head on girls at the gym because, nowadays they might record you on TikTok. And then number two, a lot of the times it's just an L. You know what I mean? It's a very low rate of success unless you're like an extremely attractive guy. Go about.
I'm not charitable to this at all. Again, I'm like the representative of like the kind of doofy, like asymmetrical, kind of overweight, not overtly attractive guys. I had trouble dating for a long time because of it. And it wasn't until I found other things that were substantive to kind of lean on that I was really able to get over that hump. And it's amazing what happens, again, when you have your shit together. You don't have to be rich. Have a job. Do you know how many dudes you jump over when you have gainful employment? It doesn't matter where it is. Even if it's at a shitty job. There's women that work those jobs. You're immediately in their space. There are a lot of women that are not quote unquote high value women. And where do they go? When they don't get the millionaires, the older rich guys, where do they go? It's like there's somebody for everybody that kind of works out that way. So I'm not really charitable about this idea that the average guy is invisible. If you're invisible, it's because you choose to be invisible. And again, there's a right way to do it. That doesn't mean go out harass the closest woman to you. But if you're invisible, it's because you haven't figured out how to engage given your current skill set. There is a path for you. And it's not just waiting 10 years and grinding until you're worth millions of dollars and people are throwing their panties at you. That's not the case. This is similar to the argument that I start to make when people talk about poverty. I know a lot of people aren't going to be charitable to this, but when I think about what it was like getting anywhere 100 years ago and what it's like now, you can be homeless living in California. You can panhandle for about 2 days. $50 to $100 a day is pretty normal in California for a panhandling take. 2 to 3 days of regular panhandling, you can be on a bus. This is having no employment, no prospects, living under a bridge. You can be on a Greyhound bus. You can end up in New York in a couple of days, and you'll have enough left over for snacks. Getting anywhere in the country is extraordinarily easy in the United States, like it's never been before. So if you don't have prospects where you are, I have limited charity for people that won't go out and find where the prospects are. It's like if you're not getting fish at this watering hole. Why are you still in that watering hole? Similarly, with finding women, you have to get outside of your space. And social media is very much a space. It's actually not as easy to access people and be accidentally exposed to different types of people the way you might think it is. It's really good at creating echo chambers. And if you don't have a big network, well, your echo chamber is going to kind of suck. So getting out, go to the gym. You can talk to people, be friendly, but go into school, go into work. They have social gatherings. They have online dating platforms. Worst case scenario, you don't talk to anybody. You're like me. You're at home, 30 hours a fucking day. I talk to my dogs who aren't very good conversation, and that's my entire day. If I was single, heaven forbid, I love my wife very dearly. It's the best thing that's ever happened to me. But if I was single, I would do what I did so many years back before I met my wife. I would get on a dating app where there are like-minded people. I can sift through people, find what my kind of peer group is, and start chipping away. And eventually you find people with similar interests. You figure out kind of where your wheelhouse is, and you work until you find somebody. It's easier today than it's ever been. So I'm not charitable to these arguments really that much.
About a certain way, but it's almost like a strategy if you're going to talk to girls in the gym nowadays.
Even 20 years ago, I said, I'm going to just do an experiment. I'm going to go up to 10 girls today, and I'm going to ask all of them for their number, and I'm going to see what percentage I got. I got 5. So I had 50-50. Half the girls I want to go out with, I could go out with. Now, I would never dare do that unless I had a camera, and I was like, it's a skit I'm doing. That way I could say I'm just an actor. But I'd never dare do that. You know what I mean? It's gone crazy.
That's
it's
ridiculous.
Funny because a lot of pranksters, that's their way of talking to girls. They'll do a prank video. Careful.
5 out of 10. Good-looking dudes, wealthy dudes aren't getting 5 out of 10. Like, what are you talking about, Greg? Is that representative of the culture? At some point, you got to acknowledge that you were working with a different skill set than everybody else. Come on, bro.
One number, like, oh, I got it. But it's a prank. Oh, wait, hold on. It's a prank. Don't get mad at me.
Yeah.
But, Greg, I want to ask you this, Greg, personally speaking. If you're a guy, right, not that tall, you're pretty short, let's say 5'6", to be
You're
example,
me.
how important is it to work out in the gym?
I think the better you look, the more in shape you are, the better your chances. I mean, absolutely. I mean, we know that women, on average, we've asked them, what body fat percentage you like? Mostly 10 to 15%. And so if you're 30% and you get down to 15, your chances are going up without question. Now, of course, there's someone for everyone. Not everyone wants a lean guy, 10 to 15. But more want that than not, and so you're increasing your odds. But what else could you do? You could get a job, you could have money, you could work on your personality, you work on your social skills, you could be yourself, because most people, they want to pretend they're something they're not to get or attract the girl. I'm like, how is that good? Then they're falling in love with somebody that you're not, and that's going to last, 6 months, and then you're going to be yourself, and then no one's going to like each other. So just be yourself, be open, have confidence, and just try. But the problem is people don't dare try because they're scared to get shut down. It used to be the number one fear of man is rejection. Now it's like the number one fear is being rejected and then made fun of on videos with it.
So the first part of that, I'm going to give Greg a big W for that. He goes right back into men can't do anything nowadays. But you can leave aside the, pursuing women for dates. And if you just increase your lot by, like he said, you can go to the gym. That's part of it. I think that's important, but not at the expense of everything else. That's the important thing to know. Gym time is only worth a good goddamn if you do it the right way. It has to be part of a concerted effort to improve you overall. It's not just my body fat's dropping. It's like going to college. Like, going to college is great, not just because you need that experience or that expertise. In a lot of professions, you don't. But they need to verify that somebody can show up to school for 4 years, do their work, be on time, be punctual. It says a lot about the person. Saying that you're the type of person that can commit to something difficult that most people fail at, and either that you stick through it long enough to do well and see progress, or that you actually enjoy it and it becomes part of your life. That says a lot about you. And for a lot of people who are struggling, and again, this happened to me. It's why I love training. It's why I don't relate to people just because we go to the gym. I relate to people who are kind of on the same wavelength as far as what it's done for them. And for me, it's been huge. It can improve your pain tolerance to allow you to handle more uncomfortable things as time goes on, which is important for life if you want to be useful to the people around you. It can condition your ability to finish what you start. It can help with your social skills. Being at the gym, no better place. And again, not just women. Go talk to the dudes. Find guy friends. Shoot the shit. Get comfortable starting conversations. Get comfortable running the topics. Get comfortable leaving conversations. I still get anxious when it's time to shut a conversation down. That's mostly why I don't like talking to people. But there's so many things you can work on about yourself that's tangentially related to the gym. The gym's great, but it's not the end-all be-all. And for you guys that have no desire to go to the gym, you can still have a complete package. Again, getting over all the other heads, getting just to the right side of the bell curve. You just got to be a little bit confident, and that can be anywhere. Find your space where you're confident. It doesn't have to be in every fucking situation, but have that thing that you're good at. Have that space where you're comfortable. Know what it's like to feel in control. Be a little confident. Have your shit together. Be responsible. Be personable. just understand the ins and outs of social interaction. And that's a skill that can be improved. So I really like that.
Yeah, it's really bad. Do you think, Greg, in your opinion, do you think that there's an attack on masculinity with all this bullshit that's going on?
Absolutely, you can't be a man anymore. There's no way. You cannot. You can try. If you're a 10 on 10, you can get away with it. If you're Chris Bumstead, you can act a certain way. But if you're an average guy, you can't dare. You have to pretend. What people do is they say what people think that they want them to say. So they just go and what the majority. If 51% of people think a certain way, that's what everyone is trying to act like. That's what they'll say because they're too scared to get canceled or be in the minority. It's kind of like when you're a kid and people would make fun of other people. It's sad, but they're bullying. People laugh or make fun of the least attractive kid or the whatever, the nerd, whatever. And it's because you don't want to be the one being made fun of. So you just go along with the majority. And so that's what's happening now. People are going along with the majority. They're scared to be themselves. They're scared to say what they actually think because they're fear of being canceled.
Damn, that's a good take, bro.
Yeah.
I don't know who that specifically applies to in that context. I'm thinking about on social media. I'm thinking about at work, at school, whatever. There are spaces you can go into where that's absolutely true. I've been there. I mean, I went to college. My last time in college was 10 years ago. So I remember 2005, 6, 7 going to some of these social study classes. Shit was wild there back then. But now there's places you can go to that you can exist in where, yeah, if you say the wrong thing, they'll take your fucking head off. However, those places are few and far between, and it usually takes some work to get there. Some corporations, you're talking about college, and if you're really high up in social media, people don't give a shit what you say if you don't have any followers. Most people don't have any followers. So as far as people being afraid, this is a tricky one because nothing is infinite. There's no infinite protection for free speech. So we can talk about the government not making laws. That's the free speech we normally think about because that's when shit gets tyrannical. But you can get tyranny in social circles. If your church, your family, your community has very rigid, like no tolerance for other ideas or for edgy shit or whatever, it can be a similar effect. So you still want to police that, but it's just not a fucking God-given right to have other people respond well to your shit, especially when you're on a private platform. Now, I can relate to these companies trying to find the right avenue for terms of service because there has to be terms of service. Not a single one of you watching this, if you took over Twitter, if you took over YouTube, any of the social media platforms you hate for censoring, not a single one of you would throw the terms of service out the window because that would affect advertisement. It'd be the Wild West. You would lose money. If it's not profitable, then you have to choose, okay, do we have our ideal that crashes into the ground or do we have something that's viable where at least there's something that people get to use? I get a bit hesitant on talking about certain things because I am at the point where this is my living. So it hits me. When there's something that could get me deplatformed, I think very carefully about it. But I don't know that that is a fear of cancellation. I understand that cancellation does exist, but that a world where there's no cancellation doesn't mean that there's a world where there isn't anything that looks like people just not wanting to hear your bullshit. The problem is those things are tangled. There isn't a clear definition of when it's your bullshit and when it's actual cancel culture running amok. It's something we're constantly voting on in real time. So anyways, again, I'm not sure how charitable I am at that, and you're going to see why here in a minute. There's a little bit of a reason why I push back against Greg on that.
Yeah, and the thing I like about you a lot, Greg, is that, you give commentary, right? You're a fitness influencer, but you give commentary on contemporary events as well, and you talk about other things, and you're not afraid to go against the grain. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of guys in the fitness industry are pussies. They're scared to...
Greg's not afraid to go against the grain. So apparently Greg doesn't have to worry about being canceled.
Say what's on their mind because they don't want to lose supplement deals. They don't want to, really say what's on their mind. Can you speak to that a little bit? Why did you say, fuck it, I'm going to say what I want. I don't care what people think.
You say, why do I not care what people think? Literally, as I was growing up and becoming a teenager and so on, I was like worried about what do people think of me and what do people this and that. And I'm like, the first time I just started saying, what if I just stopped giving a shit about what do people think and I just be myself? And it was liberating. It was like, wow, I just don't have to care. Like, so what? They don't like me. I'll find someone else who does. And so I'm making YouTube videos. I'm saying everything I want. I'm like, okay, there's 100,000 people that are going to hate me, but there's going to be 100,000 people that like me. I'll just focus on the good. You guys can all shit on me in one ear, out the next. You guys say something nice. I'm going to take that in. And so it's so much better because why pretend and be something you're not and have people like you when it's not the real you? And that's what people do. They do it all the time. And there's so many YouTubers, like people I've collaborated with, for example, and they have one persona online and it's like they're this. And then behind the scenes, oh my God, they're nothing like that. And so they have, to me, they're just actors. The easiest way to act is to be yourself. Like when you make a video, like I might scream and shout a little bit more, but it's who I am. And so if you're pretending to be whatever you're not, you don't believe in it, like how is that fun? How long can you do that for?
Not for very.
I don't know. I heard in an interview. I thought I heard in an interview Greg talking about how he doubled down on being flamboyant because he got a good result from it. and maybe he doesn't do it as much as other people do, but we all end up putting on kind of a performative face when we're in front of a camera speaking to a bunch of strangers who we're never really going to see or interact with. Now, there's this divide here between the principle of talking to other people about charged topics versus the branding that you use to do that. And sometimes they overlap, but not often. Greg's I don't give a fuck attitude, I'm not entirely sure he would do that if his entire livelihood hinged on him having a reasonably good relationship with the viewers, and his income would be taken away if he did that. He kind of proves against his point before, oh, you can't say anything. But, I say anything because this is my approach to it. And he's got his supplement shelf. He makes a stupid amount of money. He sells his diet books for like an insane amount of money. And he talks like $100, $200 for his books. Greg has done so extraordinarily well for himself. What are the odds that he would keep up this version of his engagement online if it would affect his bottom line? Probably next to nothing. And that's why people don't do this persona at work. And again, work has terms of service. You can't just be yourself because there's something you have to do to get the right answer. Now that qualifies under branding. What brand are you going to do? The angry asshole that just yells at the camera, that only works for some people some of the time. I know, I've tried it. Greg doubles down because he got a good result, which works against you can't do anything anymore. Now the principle is, if you are talking about charged topics, you should want to have that hesitation there. You need to have something that pushes back, that forces you to engage carefully with the conversation. And with a lot of these conversations, people don't engage carefully.
Very long.
And that's one thing I really like about you, man, is because a lot of people in the fitness industry are very scared. They watch what they say, and it's kind of annoying because it's like you don't feel like you're getting the real person when you watch their videos. Like they're trying to, identify in a certain manner so that they don't lose sponsorships, they don't trigger the wrong people, whatever it may be. They don't say what's on their mind.
It's everywhere in the world.
Perfect transition to this topic. So you have a background in powerlifting. What are your thoughts on what the hell's going on here with these guys that are entering in as women and completely demolishing women in powerlifting events?
So it's absolutely embarrassing. Even the Canadian Center for Ethics in Sports, they literally think that there's no advantage to being born a male over being born a female. And they'll quote different studies and they'll say, no, it's more the training and their diet and the coaching that has... I'm like, are you an idiot? Men on average are 5 inches taller than women. They have stronger bones, larger bones. They have testosterone levels 10 to 12 times higher than female. I don't care if you transition as you're older and you have lower test levels. You have the advantage of being born a male for that long. You're bigger frame, and so of course you're gonna be better. And so of course if you identify as a woman and you're a man, you're going to have a huge advantage. It makes it not fair. The reason there are female sports in the first place is because it's not fair to have them compete against men. Sure, there's 1 or 2 girls out of 1,000 that could do it, but in general, we want more participation in sports. Like I was a phys ed teacher. The more people that play, the better. There should be so many different categories. We have junior, teenage, open, masters, veteran, seniors, whatever, all these different categories to involve and encourage more people to participate. So why don't we just have the trans category that's their own division, and then we're encouraging them. We recognize their right to say, okay, identify as a woman, great. Wear whatever you want. Dress as a female. I don't care if people wear Panthers and identify as a child. I don't care. But have your own category. Like, don't make it unfair for someone else to take their spot away in the Olympics or whatever. Like, that's just wrong.
Yeah. Greg, for Prime.
So this is one of those topics that I was talking about that you have to speak about carefully. It's in your best interest to speak about it carefully, unless you don't give a fuck about having the best ideas come to the surface. If you're really just oriented in doubling down on the people that agree with you and starting a war, that's not the principled way, because that makes things worse for everybody. That's how people end up throwing rocks at each other. And that's why we have ideas of putting free speech as a primary principle. That's why that exists. That's why due process exists. We can't sidestep the discussion. We have to be able to engage in the discussion before we get to the point where we figure out, oh, this is actually different than what we thought, or this is exactly what we thought. There has to be that process of discovery, and it just gets completely fucked when people are just trying to, inspire with a bunch of rage all the people that are mad about like one little niche thing, and then people are yelling over each other's head, and it sucks. The thing about transgender sports, most people, and this is something that I hate to say it doesn't merit the hysteria, because I understand the push for it. It's aggressive. There's people that don't care about rationality. They just view marginalized people as needing to be kicked up a notch in society. And when you believe that, it's kind of like by any means, anyhow. So they don't really care about sports. I find that most people that advocate for it have trans people close to them. They're close to the trans movement, and they generally don't give a fuck about sports. So they just see it as another thing that's unfairly singling out, the person they care about. Now, the movements that try to deal with this, they do it in the worst way possible. They represent like that loony fringe all the way at the end, and they do come up with some pretty irrational thoughts. But most of the United States, and I think it's probably most of the world, even in the liberal side, the progressive side, are on board with trans stuff all the way up right until that dividing line. Like trans women in women's sports is like the cutoff where you just see support tank across most people. So I'm not entirely sure it's that big of an issue, but I get the hesitancy. I get how stupid it looks. And I'm going to be as charitable as possible, because the people that support that are thinking very empathetically. And a lot of times people think that gives them a pass to not think logically. If you're going to accept the premise that sex is different than gender ideology, and I'm not saying that's true, my position is actually I don't fucking know, so I refrain from having a strong opinion about it. So if you're going to accept those two things are different, you have to then argue in a way that fits with sex and gender ideology being different. And that means that not the gender identity then like supersedes and that overpowers sex in positions where sex is actually important. It means that both of those things exist and have to be taken into consideration. So advocating for like trans women in women's sports, to me, it's like a trans woman going to a gynecologist, because I'm a woman, women go to gynecologists. That's what we do. It's a really stupid way of thinking about things. The bottom line is we created these divisions because there is a genetic difference, and there are people that will argue that there isn't, or it isn't big. And those are people that are just ignorant to the facts. There's been enough involvement in this stuff for long enough. We can see where the numbers are. I mean, this is a bell curve, guys. This is what it looks like when you put men against women. These are the two bell curves. All right. So this hill, this is where like the greatest number of people are. And you can put anything here. 1 rep max bench press, vertical jump, whatever you want. So you'll notice there is this overlap here, where the world's strongest woman, let me see, I got that in the screen. The world's strongest woman is actually going to be stronger than a lot of guys. So they will get examples, or there will be examples of women. Well, Kristen Rhodes, a friend of ours, she was at my wedding, was the most decorated strong woman in history. And I trained female strength athletes for a long time. It's how I met my wife. Kristen Rhodes had over a 600-pound deadlift, and she was getting on middle age. She was like 45 when she did that. That beats overwhelming majority of men. But when you take somebody who's the best of the best of the best out of that population and compare it with another population, well, with men, this gap is really going to shine a light on what fair is, because you have that gap between the world's best woman and the world's best man. For a deadlift, for a woman, you have, I think it's Tamara Walcott, it's like 700 pounds, which is insane. Up until very recently, I mean, that was unfathomable. For a man, it's like over 1,100 pounds. So what are you talking about? Over a third? Now, people will make arguments that, and I've heard these extreme arguments that it's socialization. Women just aren't encouraged to do strength sports, so it's very different. And it was funny because the person that told me that was pulling from their like sophomore in college sociology class. They were just parroting what their professor said. But it's funny because you're supposed to be getting out of this like post-colonial, like white American point of view. But that's exactly what that person was coming from, because they were ignoring every other civilization throughout history. So like gymnastics, look at something like gymnastics over the entire span of the Olympics. Do you think the women's gymnastic team in North Korea, in Russia, do you think they give a fuck about Western body standards? Do you think they give a fuck about the taboos Westerners have with regards to what a woman should look like, or if they should be athletic? They have recruiting systems. These exist in so many countries all over the world, and it drives more participation than in so many other sports over the entire world, because it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. Women's gymnastics has been around forever. That disparity exists there. It exists anywhere where there's a demonstration of power, especially as a coefficient of body weight. So looking into something like Olympic lifting, women's Olympic lifting has been around for a long time. You have long enough that women have been recruited for it. The best clean and jerk a woman has come out with, I want to say it's on the order of 420, maybe 430 pounds. The best for a man, you have not just Lasha, who is a giant of a man and is around 600 pounds. You have Pizarenko, who is rumored to have hit 595 or 600 in training at a body weight of 265. The gap between the best men and the best women is insane. It's absurd. And you can control for anything you like to try and mute those numbers down. You can put them in the same body weight category. Doesn't change the fact that men get bigger than women. How would that work for football or soccer? How would that work for basketball? It fucking doesn't. So the bottom line is, if you have sports where men and women are forced to compete together, if you take the logical conclusion where we just remove the gender divisions, which is logical, by the way, if you support this, because if there aren't differences between men and women biologically, doesn't that mean that the existence of these divisions are inherently discriminatory? Isn't that what it means? So shouldn't you be going to the direction where you're deconstructing these gendered constructs? And I have talked to people, I've heard people talk who are they think exactly that. They think, well, I'm trying to get rid of these divisions. Well, if you do that, you're not going to have anywhere for women to compete, because if the WNBA competed with the NBA, guess what? The men are dominating. That's a fact. So then you have to go to kind of borderline affirmative action rules. So I can imagine some weird future where the women are competing, but they have to have so many women for every guy. So there's still these two different divisions, and then you're still battling things out with people on the trans side of things. It's a fucking mess, guys. I don't know what the solution is. I think you can absolutely push for trans rights under some idea of what transness is that respects that there are times where biology takes precedent. If you can't do that, it seems many people tend to agree that's taking it a step too far. And I think that's where they shoot themselves in the foot, because they work against people who otherwise would be like completely on board. So I don't know. It's a fucking mess. I just know that whenever people start to argue this point on either side, it kind of turns into a shit show.
Minister, I agree with you, man, because the thing is that, it's funny because these leftists and these feminists and these libs, right, they vote for this type of legislation to allow these individuals to participate in their sports. But the people that lose at the end of the day are the women. Like, they're the ones that take the L's. They're the ones that lose the scholarships. They're the ones that can't compete, because I've said it before. I'll say it again. Women get mad at me on the podcast when I say this. Men are physically superior to women in almost every way. More stronger bone density, more denser muscles, more lung capacity. We're just stronger than them, taller than them, like you said, on average 5 inches. Like, we just beat them in every regard, so they can't compete, right? So there's a reason why we got two different leagues. But when you want to go ahead and combine it, like, yeah, guys are going to go ahead and compete in the female sections and absolutely destroy them. This happened in the NCAA. I think some guy was ranked like 500th for swimming.
A swimmer.
Yeah.
And then he starts setting records as a woman. It's like, it's happened in cycling, weightlifting.
Yeah, kills him, like first place.
Now, I mean, in general, he's right if you're talking about comparing everybody in the population against each other. I'm not entirely sure that Myron understands the degree to which strong women exist and how much stronger they are than even him. And when you train around strong women in strength sports for a long time, you really get a sense of what women are capable of. It's evolved immensely since strength sports have become a lot more popular, and women have kind of broken past that taboo of women lifting. It's improved immensely. There's a lot of fucking strong women out there. So that stereotype kind of has to change. I know these guys absolutely hate the concept of female lifters, of women being strong, and that's its own can of worms. But I don't think he understands the degree to which him and Fresh and Fit are both kind of on the average side of things. There's a good chunk of women in the world that would mop the floor with them.
He's smoking them, dude. So you take a mediocre male, he identifies as a woman, now he destroys these females, and they're the ones that are taking the L's. And I agree with you. Here's the thing. Even though I laugh at female sports and I think that it's a big waste of time and no one should watch it, I still think that it needs a place, right? Because, and the reason why I say that is because I think women need sports because it keeps them away from doing stupid things. If I do have a daughter one day, I'm going to put her in every sport and keep her preoccupied, because I always say idle hands do the devil's work. And women in sports, right, like high school, etc., keeps them from doing stupid hoe shit. So not all the time, but most of the time.
Until they get to college.
Until they get to college.
No, it's funny. I have the opposite view. Well, probably because I was a phys ed teacher. Like, for females to play in sports, I think that it's the best. Like, I think it's awesome.
No, I agree.
More people play sports, the better. So should they have female or male sport? Of course they should. You know what I'm like? Of course they should. Like, that's something that we're 100% disagreeing with. But.
No. I agree that they should be playing sports. I'm just saying I laugh at people that watch professional female sports.
Well,
yeah,
for example, you'd rather watch male
back.
tennis than female tennis, or female golf. Like, it depends, like, on the sport. Sometimes people will be like, well, in male tennis, they're so powerful in the serves. It's over so quick. Women in sports, they rally longer. So some people could argue it's more interesting. So
I think Greg made a really good point here, and I'm happy you pushed back against that. These guys are coming from a position where they're going to say a lot of this really obtuse stuff. And it's hard to tell if they're being edgy, because being edgy for comedy, that gets treated differently than actually having an opinion. But this is also kind of a mask they wear, because those types of jokes are tied very closely with what they actually believe and what they actually promote. So it's really hard to tell when they say really out there shit to what degree they're just kind of fucking around and what degree, no, this is something that's going to be in my book, Why Women Deserve Less. So women's sports, I get it physically. There's a difference. Everybody makes fun of the WNBA. Every sport is different. Women's soccer, everybody fucking watches women's soccer. Women's soccer is hugely competitive. Women's fighting. When you have a direct combat sport, or when you have this team versus that team, and it doesn't involve these aerial acrobatics that we're used to seeing with men, there's plenty of room for people to watch it. There's plenty of room for it to be exciting. Even women's strongman is exciting. You know that they're not lifting as much as the open men, but it's not about, in absolute terms, it's not about who's setting a record today. If that were the case, you would just need people setting world records all day for there to be a viable sport, and that's not what we look for. The fact that there is competition is enough. If you have it packaged well, if it's visually stimulating, if it tells a story, just about any women's sport can be packaged and sold to a general market. So this is stupid. And in fact, like, it keeps them from doing stupid shit. That's true for everybody. That's true for everybody. That's true for boys. Why do we have sports in like troubled areas, inner city schools? How many football programs have kept kids from getting into trouble? How many people have chosen a better path because they wanted to play in college?
I don't know. I think it's great to have both. I'm not going to say that you should only have one on TV. It's like the audience dictates what should be shown. Obviously, male sports overall much more popular. If it wasn't, then, well, the NBA, the males would be paid less than the women. But it's not like that. The money that's being paid is going to reflect the eyeballs. And so if there's more advertisers on women's sports, then they're going to pay them more.
Yeah, I mean, there are some sports that people do prefer to watch. Women, like tennis is an example. I know a decent amount of guys watch female MMA.
That's real.
I watch MMA a lot. The women's events are quite exciting.
Women are vicious.
The fights is quick, so that's the only negative. But
let's be real here, though, man. We ain't watching no damn women's sports right now.
I watch women's sports. But again, I think women should definitely be able to play sports, and I think it's good for them, especially when they're growing up. And
how charitable of you,
especially in those years where bad things can happen. But yeah, I mean, I laugh at female sports in general. But hey, we can agree to disagree, right? But no, I definitely think they should have the same opportunities, and I think it's ridiculous when you got basically men coming in and demolishing them. I don't think that's fair. They need to keep.
The joke is funny until it's not. Like, I get it, making fun of. I've made jokes about women's sports. I think everybody has. Especially, jokes are funniest when the target takes itself too seriously. That's kind of what humor does. But that's probably the 9,000th time he's made a joke about women's sports. It gets kind of stupid. And I come from a background, I coached a lot of women to compete. And when you get close to them, I mean, you take this guy in his older age, put him on like a youth soccer team for women or something, have him coach young girls. His perspective is going to be really fucking different. This is just the cringy, edgy shit that he's saying. I laugh at women's sports. That's kind of dumb. And it's also very strange if you think so little of women's sports. He seems very, very concerned that like trans women are coming in and trouncing on them. Like, it's not fair. Like, what is it? Is it an institution that should be kind of cared for and preserved, or is it something that's a joke and it's like you don't take it seriously? That's kind of dumb.
Keep the gender separate. So go ahead. You have something?
No.
And then okay, so powerlifting, and then what? Are there guys competing in? No, do you foresee that there's going to be guys competing in female bodybuilding in the future if they keep going with this trend?
There's already been a guy competing in female bodybuilding.
Oh,
it's already happened. It was about a year or two ago. I forget the event or the contest, but I've already seen it happen, and they didn't look that good.
What's her name? I mean, his name.
I can't remember. I can't remember my own name half the time. But ask me a name. Oh my God, there's no way. Yeah, it's definitely happened. Absolutely.
Damn, I didn't know. Damn, it's really going into
That's
that.
wild.
How do you even judge that? Like,
shout to Zuby.
Yeah, I guess. Holy shit.
Damn.
All right, we'll hit some of these chats real quick. Okay, so
Yeah, and I'm not sure about where this is going. I really do believe this is the hill that the trans movement doesn't want to die on, and I think there's a lot of people that are realizing that because, again, it's so unpopular in even progressive circles, but also everything everybody said, like the worst conservative takes where people were just guessing what was going to happen, kind of happened. And that was that every time you see somebody move over into a division like this, they're going to end up just taking all the medals. And considering how many trans athletes there actually are and how well represented they are in like all of these huge wins and records and so on, it just confirms the kind of math of how different, how separated those bell curves are, even with the hormone replacement therapy. Like, testosterone is important. It's not the only thing. A Y chromosome does a fucking lot more than just increase your test levels. So looking at the swimmers, looking at powerlifting, looking at bodybuilding, looking at cycling, there's a lot of sports. I mean, I don't even know if these were Photoshop, but I remember seeing like some either rugby or soccer stuff from the other side of the world where it was like high school girls and there was like somebody who looked like they were fucking 7 feet tall. Anyways, it becomes more and more hard to defend because it requires you ignoring something that's in front of your face. So I think the intelligent way forward isn't to ignore it, and it's not to try to inject emotion and hysteria like this ideology that you set has absolutely no wiggle room based on what you observe and what works for everybody else. I hope the trans movement, the LGBT movement, finds a way forward that involves a definition and kind of principles that don't just insist on displacing everybody else because that's consistent with what we want to be true. Maybe it will, maybe we won't. We'll see. But I do think the pendulum's swinging the other way. I think enough people have seen this stuff and reacted to it. And as hard as it is to defend, I don't think we're going to see the problem get worse. But I've fucking been wrong before.